But I want to shift direction for a moment to talk about the role that Emmanuel played in this whole process, and also why Emmanuel believes that this is an appropriate project for them to undertake at this point. I mean, John, of course, has been involved with Emmanuel Music, which is housed in Boston's Emmanuel Church for its entire history, which is, what, 40 some years now?
We did a sort of, I guess it was a preview reading there. It was the first one, and it was the first two scenes. It was what Schirmer's had produced up to that point. And it was over in the Kresge Auditorium with a number of Emmanuel singers very active now still, and Craig Smith conducting, and I noticed that at least 10 or 11 players who will play this time. And we did actually the recording of it is remarkably representative and coherent. The purpose of it was to give some people at the Met an idea what was coming, but also just for me to get a sense of what I was working with. And I knew the first two scenes were, in making them, I think any first scene of an opera is difficult to do. And I wanted to just get a sense of what.
So what did you learn from it?
Well, I learned a lot about the music and about the practicalities of the orchestration. What I couldn't learn without staging was what the flow was, the visual flow. And that in opera today is a very big and important thing. I was in those days not a big believer in workshop. I thought, well, that's what they do over in the musical theater. And since then, I've understood much more that, particularly in terms of the modern theater and what we expect from it, that workshops make a lot of sense, because you do find out about the movement, and you find out about how a scene looks and how actors move through a scene. And I understand why they've been doing that Broadway style for a century.
Another Emmanuel dimension to this was the rehearsal tape, which is how a lot of us sort of first encountered the opera. This was done for the benefit of the singers, was it not? Or?
It was. I hope I'm not speaking with too much indiscretion when I say that the previous big Met new production goes to Versailles, which the preparation of which was constructed with an entire workshop cast of Met apprentice singers. Some of them turned out to be quite good, like Renee Fleming and so forth. People who learned the whole piece, but were not cast in the piece. They were preparation singers. And they had a preparation pianist, and they learned the whole score and made a recording from which the actual cast learned their parts. So they learned it from an actual sung through end-to-end, extremely highly polished version by singers, a couple of whom eventually did appear in the show as understudies and so forth. But, and though it was a very efficient way to prepare the piece in terms of learning the piece, it was wildly expensive. Everyone was paid quite well to learn to essentially have a production-ready version of the piece. So this time they said, we're not doing that. We want to do something more economical. We want you to make a piano tape of the whole piece, end to end, in whatever tempo you like, and so forth. And if I were to compare the two budgets, it's a staggering economic, brilliant decision on the part of the Met. And so what we did was, I had a complete vocal score. Judith Gordon learned to play the whole thing. We felt that some differentiation of the sound of the voices would be necessary, so I used my electric piano from MIT. Rosie Harbison served as the editor, and Tom Stevenson from Emmanuel did the actual final putting together, and we did come up with about 6 weeks later, an end-to-end piano tape, which to this day is, in terms of continuity, right on the button. I mean, the tempos, we worked and worked and worked to be as accurate as we could be. And that's the document from which the Met pianists and singers and preparing people and so forth, all of them learned the piece. And it was certainly for the composer, for all of us who did it, also very, it was a thorough study. It really was a thorough study. I wasn't able, in my role of just playing all the vocal parts, I wasn't able to sort of pull outside and think, well, how about that scene? And, you know, the sort of stuff that in rehearsal became a much more live question. It was much more, let's come in on time here.